So moved.
Any second? Honorable Evelyn Borough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Evening of our Board of Rules, representing Open Sapler Leader constituency. I rise to second the motion able moved by my colleague on the rules delivery.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. You are directing yourself further. Honorable Jones, please proceed to lay the report. Honorable Jerry has been very angry since he lost the ranking based on age. So we understand when you defend your spleen. The first order of the day, honorable colleagues, is consolidation of two bills. Honorable members may wish to note the bills are on the same subject matter. And now invite the chairman, Committee on Rules and Business, to move the bills to now consolidated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, Jeff. I represent the good people of Buluku, my dear colleagues. I'm from Benue State. I rise to move that a bill for an act to regulate international trips for medical treatment by public officers to strengthen the health institutions for efficient service delivery and for related matters, and a bill for an act to amend the National Health Act 2014 to regulate international trips for medical treatment by public officers to strengthen the health institutions for efficient service delivery and for related matters, be consolidated as one bill. Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, I so move.
Seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Emmanuel Memga. I represent Kasnala Okun, Logo Federal Constituency of Benue State. I stand to second the motion acceptably moved by Chairman Rules and Business. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Committee on Rules and Business, please get to the date.
Brother's keeper. Let's pass the information. Let National Orientation Agency do a thorough job, Mr.
Reading of the bill for an act to amend the Oil and Gas Export Free Zone Authority Act, Chapter 05, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, provide for the designation and establishment of oil and gas free zones in Nigeria for related matters. Honorable members will recall that the House adopted the report of the Committee of the Whole on the bill on Thursday, 21st December 2017. I therefore call on the leader to move the bill now at the third time. Acting leader. Oho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apologies for keeping the House waiting. I rise to move that the bill for an act to amend the Oil and Gas Exports Free Zone Authority Act, Chapter 05 Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, to provide for the designation and establishment of oil and gas free zones in Nigeria and for related matters, HBs 64332 and 400, be read a third time. I so.
Chairman, Rules and Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the third reading of the bill acceptably moved by the Leader of the House. I so second.
Honorable members, the question is the bill we now read the third time. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Now I invite the clerk to read the long title of the bill.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, a bill for an act to amend the oil and gas export free of 05 laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004 to provide for the designation and free zones in Nigeria and for related matters. Third reading.
Bill read the third time and passed. Third order of the day, honorable colleagues, commencement of debate on general principles of bill of an act to amend the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 in order to extend the implementation year of the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 from 31st December 2017 to 31st March 2018, standing in the name of the House Leader. Honorable members will recall the bill was read the first time on Thursday, 18th of January 2018, and I invite the leader to move that the bill be now read the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to move that the bill for an act to amend the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 in order to extend the implementation year of the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 from 13 December 2017 to 31st March 2018, 8B 1294, be read the second time.
Rules and business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second for the motion for the second reading of bill number 3 as moved by the leader of the House. Also second.
Leader, is there any debate to lead on this bill? It's self-explanatory.
Very straightforward. Like I said, self-explanatory. It basically extends the implementation year of the FCT Budget Appropriation Act from 31 December 2017 to 31 March 2018. That's like about a 3-month extension, and it's self-explanatory. Thank you.
So, honorable colleagues, I put the question. And the question is that bill be now read the second time. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Clerks now invited to read the long title of the bill.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, a bill for an act to amend the Federal Territory Appropriation Act 2017 in order to implement and extend the implementation year of the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 from 31st December 2017 to 31st March 2018. Second reading.
The bill is referred to the Committee of Supply. Fourth order of the day is commencement of debate on the general principles of bill for an act to amend the Nigerian Communications Act, Chapter N97, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, to provide for remittance of all monies received by the Commission into the Federation account pursuant to Section 162 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 is amended, and for related matters, standing in the name of Honorable Samuel Ikon. Honorable members will recall that the bill was read the first time on Tuesday, 16th January 2018, and I invite Honorable Ikon Samuel to move the bill be now read the second time. Honorable Sam Ikon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Ikon is conspicuously absent. I therefore move that we step down item number 4 on the order paper. So moved.
I'm not too sure Honorable Ikon is, he was one of the first people I saw welcoming. Maybe something has happened. on the order paper stepped down by a leaf of the House. Fifth order of the day, honorable colleagues, commencement of debate on the general principle of Bill for an Act to amend the Nigerian Research Institutes Act, Chapter N 132, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, to include the establishment of the Shea Butter Research Institute and for related matters, standing in the name of Honorable Abubakar Amuda Kalike G. Honorable members will recall the bill was read the first time on Tuesday, 16th January 2018, and I invite Honorable Kalike to move that the bill be now read the second time. Honorable Kalike.
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Kalike 2 is not available to move bill number 5. Therefore, move that will step it down.
Item number 5 on the order paper, stepped down by leave of the House. Sixth order of the day, honorable colleagues, is commencement of debate on the general principles of the Bill of an Act to establish Chartered Institute of Social Work practitioners and to make provisions, among other things, for membership and control of the profession of social works and for related matters, standing in the name of Honorable Sylvester Obaga. Honorable members will recall that the bill was read the first time on Tuesday, 19 December 2017, and I invite Honorable Obaga to move that the bill be now read a second time.
Right, Honorable Speaker, Honorable colleagues. My name is Honorable Sylvester Obaga. I represent Abakaliki constituency and from Level 6. My move that the bill for an act to establish the Chartered Institute of Social Work practitioners and to make provisions among others.
Honorable Osai has a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, distinguished honorable colleagues. I remain Honorable Osai Nicholas Osai. I represent the Okwani Federal constituency of Delta State. My point of order, Mr. Speaker, is Order 12, Rule 60. Order 12, Rule 14. A bill of the same subject matter. Mr. Speaker, Head Bill 161 was passed on the 7th, 6, 2017. The same bill is being brought again for discussion, having the same functions. I have the two bills here. The one we pass and the one that is being used now for second reading. The all borders on social work. Mr. Speaker, distinguished honorable colleagues. So as we bring it forward, I already discussed with my colleagues, who also midwife the passage of Honorable Baga midwife passage of that bill, because that bill was referred to his committee.
Chairman, Rules and Business. What happened? Okay, Honorable Obaga.
Right, Honorable Speaker, Honorable colleagues. The two bills talks about social work, but not on ground commission as the first bill is all about. This bill is on institute of the professionals, the practitioners of that bill, which is being regulated by a body of commission. So it cannot be the same, Mr. Speaker. I believe I midwifed the passage of the commission bill, but this is a chartered institute who will take up trainings and moderation of the activities of the practitioners, but completely different because this is an institutional bill and the other one is commission bill.
Chairman, rules and business.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think we cannot completely throw away the point of order raised by Honorable side. I think I will plead that the House will step down. I apologize that we do not actually speak. I will plead that the House will step down this item. We'll take a second look at it before the next step of action. I do really apologize.
Well, let's have a formal motion to step it down so that you can reconcile your position. Whatever is worth doing, they say is worth doing well. So if we must do it, let's be 100% sure that we're doing the right thing. So could you please move for the House to step down the item?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, Jeff, I represent the good people of Buluku, my dear colleagues. I rise to move that item number 6 on the order paper is stepped down for further legislative consideration. Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, I so move.
Item number 6 on the order paper, stepped down by leave of the House. The seventh order of the day, honorable colleagues, a motion for rescission on the bill for an act to establish National Agency for Ethics and Values, provide for the functions and powers of the agency, the qualifications and procedures for the appointment of the chairman and members, and for related matters pursuant to Order 1, Rule 1 sub Rule 2, and Order 9, Rule 1 sub Rule 6, of the standing orders of the House of Representatives, standing in the name of Honorable Odebomi Olusegun Dokun. Honorable Shegun is now invited to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable colleagues, Odebomi Shegun is my name. I represent the good people of Surulere Ubulu and Federal Constituency. I stand this morning to move a motion on rescission of the bill for an act to establish National Agency for Ethics and Value to provide for the functions and power of the agency, the qualifications and procedures for the appointment of the chairmen and members and the related matter. Pursuant to the Order 1, Rule 1 sub Rule 2, and Order 9, Rule 1 sub Rule 6 of the Standing Order of the House of Representatives. The House notes that I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Any seconder? Seconder, Honorable TJ.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, I'm Honorable Yusuf Ahmed Tijani, member representing Okene, Magogo Federal Constituency. I rise to second the motion tabled by my colleagues. I so second.
Honorable Shegun Bonvik.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I remain Honorable Shegun Odebomi, member representing Surulere Ubulu and Federal Constituency. The House notes that the bill for an act to establish National Agency for Ethics and Values to provide for the functions and powers of the agency, the qualifications and procedures for the appointment of the chairmen and members, and for related matter, was passed on 17th of October 2017. Also note that the clause 2D of the bill was preemptive as it made reference to non-existing acts and allowing the said clause to stand will mislead the public as the intent of the purpose of the bill. Resolved, deciding the division of the clause 2D of the bill for an act to establish National Agency for Ethics and Values to provide for the functions and power of the agency, the qualifications and procedures for the appointment of the chairmen and members, and for related matter, and recommit the clause to the committee of the whole for reconsideration. As so moved, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman, rules and business.
Mr. Speaker, truly I don't understand this procedure. He has moved the motion, it was seconded, he's moving the second time again. I don't know what is up to.
He is debating, not moving the motion. Maybe that's the debate. Of course.
Okay.
Well, have you debated the motion? You are moving it twice. Can you speak to your mic, please?
Mr. Speaker, the bill was passed on the 17th of October, but there's a clause there that if we allow it to go like that, it will be misleading because it's referring to the non-existing bill, and that is why the committee feel that we should decide remove that one from it before the bill from the past bill. That is why we're bringing that to.
Okay, it's just a very simple motion for rescission of the bill that has already been passed on account of the fact that the committee dictated some kind of mistake on the bill. So I think in line with the principles that whatever is worth doing well, it's better for us to bring it back so that we can correct it before it goes out there. So I'll put the question. Those in favor of the motion, say aye. Those against it, say nay. Ayes have it. I'll take an announcement. A letter of invitation. This is to inform as well as invite you and all my colleagues that today, the 24th of January 2018, marks my 53rd birthday. And by this medium, inviting you to my office, suite 350, immediately after plenary for a prayer session and heavy refreshment. Yours, oh, you said lights? No, but I'm seeing heavy refreshment here. Maybe because you are growing older. Are you sure you are 53? OC. You need to convince us that you are 53. I thought you were 53 last year. Announcer Honorable Prestige OC. So congratulations on your purported 53rd birthday. You need to convince us that you are 53, really. Because I see the gray. So move on, honorable colleagues. Eighth order of the day is a motion. Oh, okay. We are having a delegation here from a state parliament in Somalia, I guess. And there's need for us to take a motion so that they can come in line with our practice here to come and observe our proceedings. And I understand they are somewhere around the entrance to the chambers. So chairman rules, okay, leader is here. Leader. Motion for admittance of strangers in the chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable colleagues, I rise to move for the admittance in accordance with the rules, specifically Order 19 through 8, that the House will admit into the chamber the delegation from the House of Representatives of Portland State of Somalia, led by its Speaker and two other honorable members, for purposes of observing the proceedings of this House today. I so move.
Rules of business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion as ably moved by the Leader of the House. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Clap. Clap. They should be ushered in if they are wrong. So we move to the whip can usher them in. The eighth order of the day is a motion on needs to address the underutilization of Ikorodu lighter terminal and make it an export gateway, standing in the name of Honorable Babe Jimmy Benson. Honorable Babe Jimmy Benson is now invited to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Honorable colleagues. My name is Baba Jimmy Benson. I represent the good people of Ikorodu Federal Constituency of oil-rich Lagos State. Mr. Speaker, I have a motion titled the need to address the underutilization of the Ikorodu lighter terminal and make it an export gateway. Mr. Speaker, the House notes that the Ikorodu lighter terminal, with 2 large warehouses and adjudged to be one of the largest in this country, is among the 3 light terminals constructed by the Nigerian Ports Authority to decongest major ports in Nigeria, particularly the Apapa and Tinkan Island ports in Lagos State. Also note that the multi-billion naira investment is almost moribund as it is operating below capacity, thus contributing nothing significant to the nation's economy. The House is also aware that though the Nigerian Customs Service took over the operation of the lighter terminal sometime in 2008 with a view to securing overtime cargoes and facilitating the release of same to the owners, little or nothing has been done by the Nigerian Customs Service to designate the Ikorodu cargo terminal as a major export gateway as a means of reducing traffic to the Apapa and Tinkan ports. And the facility has therefore continued to rot away owing to low patronage. The House further notes that while the staff strength of the Ikorodu lighter terminal has increased over the years, there is little or no activity whatsoever in the terminal, with overtime cargoes that were transferred to the facilities from Apapa and Tinkan Island ports lying fallow and wasting away for over 10 years now. Cognizant that given the huge economic challenges confronting the nation, which are manifested in reduced job opportunities, business collapses, expanding the capacity of the terminal to an export gateway and putting its facilities to maximum use will open the economy by increasing Nigeria's non-oil export volume, create jobs, decongest other ports, and further earn foreign exchange for the country. The House resolves to urge the Federal Ministry of Transportation and Interior to direct the relevant agencies to submit memorandum to the House Committees on Port Harbour Waterways, Customs and Excise, and Legislative Compliance on the current state of the Ikorodu lighter terminal and the realistic efforts being made to restructure the terminal to ensure its effective utilization. To also urge the Nigerian Ports Authority and the Nigerian Customs Service to put proper terminal operational procedures in place at the Ikorodu lighter terminal to ensure that overtime cargo containers are released to owners with 50% waiver of all charges, so as not to completely undermine federal government income and the best interest of the business and economy. Also mandate at the Committee on Port Harbour and Waterways, Customs and Excise, and Legislative Compliance to visit the Ikorodu lighter terminal for an on-the-spot assessment and liaise with necessary stakeholders with a view to bringing the terminal to effective use and report back in 6 weeks for further legislative action. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Second, Honorable Nasir Ali Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My name is Nasir Ali Ahmed. I represent Nasara Federal Constituency, and I'm from Kano State. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion of ably moved by my honorable colleague. I so second.
Honorable Babajimi, before you lead the debate on this motion, there's only something about the name. I thought you would even move first that we change the name from lighter terminal to heavy terminal. So if it's called lighter, why do you want to turn it into heavy terminal?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. When they start making it more useful, we will change the name from lighter to terminal. That process is in my head, and it's something that I will also propose in the fullness of time, sir. So, as a member of the privatization committee, Mr. Speaker, we visited most of the ports in Lagos. What we saw were congestion, inefficiencies, and chaos. The amount of imports that come into our ports are heavy, and they stretch the capacity of the port. Whereas we have a port that is idle in my federal constituency that needs to be utilized. That is what brought about this motion, Mr. Speaker, and all the prayers therein. Accordingly, I urge this House to look at this request as a request that will add value to the Nigerian economy, as a request that will add value to the Lagos economy, and as a request that will add value to the Ikorodu economy. So I urge all members to please support this motion and make it pass with the speed of light. Thank you very much.
Before I invite Honorable Sai to contribute to the debate, let me introduce our visitors and welcome them to the chambers. In the chambers we have a delegation from Port Puntland, state of Somalia. A delegation is led by Honorable Ahmed Ali Shure, who is the Speaker of the State Parliament. And we have also, as members of his delegation, Honorable Said Abdi Samatar, Member of Parliament, Honorable Abdi Said Mohammed, Member of Parliament, Honorable Mahmoud Said Nur, Parliamentary Staff, Honorable Mohammed Ali Farah, UNDP Staff, Somalia. So you're welcome to Nigeria and specifically to the House of Representatives. We wish you an engaging and very fruitful stay while in Nigeria. Thank you very much for coming. You can now take your seats. Honorable Sai.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, distinguished honorable colleagues. I remain Honorable Osai Nicholas Osai. I represent local Kwani Federal Constituency of Delta State. Mr. Speaker, distinguished honorable colleagues, I rise to adopt the submission of my honorable colleagues who have brought these issues that is timely. Mr. Speaker, you will recall that Singapore's mainstay of economy is maritime. And if we agree that Singapore's mainstay of economy is maritime, that is the biggest, even bigger than the oil industry, like yet on tap. Mr. Speaker, if we have one of our own that have tried before, and today he looks moribund, it requires what?
Honorable Hassan, your point of order, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. Hassan Saleh, I rise on the basis of Order 51. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, this motion that has been presented by Honorable Babajimi is an infrastructure motion, and by our rules, it's not supposed to be debated other than to be sent to the appropriate committee for their legislative input.
Well, we are talking about utilization of an infrastructure. We are not talking about building an infrastructure. So I don't know in what sense it became an infrastructure motion. We are talking about utilization of an existing infrastructure, not building the infrastructure. Osai, please. Okay, Chairman, Rules and Business. Osai.
And besides, I want to guide Honorable Hassan Saleh, there is no other one in Arugu, so he should call it correctly.
So, Honorable Osai, please contribute to the debate. Honorable Osai, you want to withdraw your submission? You are withdrawing it. Okay, Honorable Osai, take your seat, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. Hassan Saleh, representing the very good people of Ado, Ogbani Bokokufra constituency. Mr. Speaker, I would like to bow to superior arguments, and I will draw my earlier observation of the order, and to crave your indulgence to allow me to argue or debate in favor of this motion.
How many times do you want to speak on the motion? So, honorable colleagues, Honorable Hassan didn't make any submission. So everything is cancelled, so he can now be recognized to speak. Everything he has said before has been withdrawn as if they were never made. Okay, Honorable Osai, they will go back to Hassan later.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, that I enjoy complete total protections on this ground of the Green Chamber. Mr. Speaker, like what I was saying, Singapore main state today, the economy of Singapore is traveling today because of maritime. And it has also made Singapore what they are today in the economy of nation. Today we have one of our own that has existed over time, abandoned. And it requires, which I know, that this Green Chamber has always come to the rescue of the nation. And that is why I have to give a commendation to the honorable member that have brought this to the fore. Mr. Speaker, there's no time like this. And I know the Committee of Harbor is always on ground to do justice to what they know to do. Mr. Speaker, I wholeheartedly support this motion and I agree with the total submission of the mover of this motion. And urge my colleagues to give support to this motion. Because Nigeria requires a lot of revenue. And not only revenue, our teeming supporters who are the grassroots need jobs. And when those posts are revived, it will increase the job opportunity that the teeming youth today are agitating. Our basic concern is good governance. And what is good governance is employment, job opportunity to youth. So on this ground, Mr. Speaker, I submit that I support this motion and urge my colleagues to follow suit. Thank you.
Well, even though I'm not permitted to contribute to the debate, but I raised an important issue. Maybe if we have a former custom officer here, he can educate us to ensure that we get it right. I didn't call on the ranking by age because he has lost that ranking. But I know you are one of them. But the issue is that why was the terminal named lighter? Is it that it was constructed for the purposes of handling lighter things, so it can be converted into a heavy terminal? That's just what we need so that we are appropriately guided. Honorable Jerry Alaboson before the DS.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you for this privilege. My name is Jerry Alabos. I'm from Imo State, representing our law son of the federal constituency. Mr. Speaker, the Ikorodu Lighter Terminal was named as such because hitherto, when our Papa and Tinker were very busy, they were carrying those 2 badges, lighter ones. They were carrying badges to carry those to that for release, to help decongest our Papa and Tinker. But now that the place is becoming autonomous, what the Nigerian Customs did was to be dumping what they call overtime cargoes. That if people import goods and they don't clear it, and it's over 90 days, they now carry them there for attention. But Mr. Speaker, what happened now is that the place is suffering from what I may call diminishing returns. The number of officers posted there are more than the activities happening there. And that's why the motion is addressing it. 2, he's also arguing that the place will be used for exports, which is good. But the important thing is that the place has not been dredged. They need to dredge the sea route to Ikorodu
so that it will be able to accommodate bigger vehicles. Another definition of the lighter terminal aspect of it is that the lighter vehicles that go to the place, not big ships. Lighter vehicles, they carry small vehicles to the place. Now, if the place is dredged, big ships can now go there to take cargo. But for now, because our gentleman representing Ikurudu, I brought it up and I hereby support that the place should be dredged so that more goods will be accommodated even in terms of export to help Tinkan, Apapa, One Port, and Port Harcourt, even Warri Port. So if the place is overdue, because a lot of officers have been posted to the place, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, protect me. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion is timely, and the earlier we allow it to happen so that people can go there and start exporting, the better for it. It's going to help Apapa, Tinkan, and others. It also decongest Apapa and Tinkan, and more officers will have more functions to perform. Unlike now, when they are doing. So, Mr. Speaker, I sincerely support Babajimi on this very motion. I so submit, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, because Honorable Jerry has spoken, I'll let the cat out of the bag. He used to be scared of members when he was in the customs. I remember when we sent notice of oversight, he ran away from his command. And that time. This, you want to contribute?
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. My name is Lasun Yusu. I represent the Airport Olorunga Oloshuku Federal Constituency. I'm from the state of Osun. First, Honorable Jerry has done very well because your question bordered on the design and the engineering aspect of the port itself, which he has adequately answered. And I just want to commend you for repeating that question, because Honorable Jimmy Benson came with the idea that the facility itself is ready and can serve as an alternative to Apapa and Tinkan, whereas by the design and the name itself, it has its own limitation. So what I would advise when it comes to amendment, that we should know all the data on the design of the port itself and see whether it can actually serve the purpose that Honorable Jimmy Benson thinks that port can be used for. Because by the mere mentioning of lighter, it shows that that place is not dredged and might not be able to accept heavy vessels, and ditto for the kind of cargo that to be deposited there. So Honorable Jerry has done well, and Mr. Speaker, I will plead on behalf of Honorable Jerry Alagoso that you consider his ranking by age and seniority. If he passed the two tests, you can restore his ranking. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Leader.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I want to align with most of the, if not all of the speakers that came prior to me. But let me just address one or two things, Mr. Speaker. I agree with the poster. Why is it called lighter? Or is it just a transit terminal? But I think the fact that it's called lighter cannot lead us to a conclusion that it cannot be heavier. We do not know the reasons why it was called lighter, and that is why, on the issue of dredging and the rest of it, that is why Honorable Jimmy has included Prayer 1 and Prayer 3 actually covers that the committee should go there, investigate, is it underused, is there capacity to develop it? And that is the crux of this motion. Is there sufficient potential capacity to further develop that terminal? What goes with it, the job creation, decongestion, all those things are there, and they're very important. And if ports are congested, it actually affects the economy. Apart from the fact that traffic will be diverted to less congested ports outside of the country. So I think this is a very good and very timely motion. I would just like to add that the work should be done speedily, because the opportunity could never be better. Now that we're about to pass a budget,
Yes, we are always very mindful about raising the ceiling and raising the quantum of the budget. But if we all agree as a house that this is an essential motion, good for the economy, good for job creation, and the rest of it, then this is a time, if the committee can speedily go ahead and do the investigation, invite whoever the stakeholders, and if this can be developed, if the dredging can be done, then I think it is a time when we should include, but that's going to cost money. It's time for us to include, at least in phases, to include the cost of upgrading this terminal to a heavier terminal. Thank you.
Honorable Jones.
Mr. Speaker, my dear honorable colleagues, Honorable Sir Jones Chubudi Onyerere, representing the largest federal constituency in the country, Nkwere, Isu, Wangalengaba federal constituency in Imo State. Mr. Speaker, I must salute Jimmy for bringing to the fore this very good motion. Mr. Speaker, when I read motions like this, my heart bleeds. And my heart bleeds for several reasons, Mr. Speaker. Here we are as a country in a constant...
Honorable Jones, your heart is bleeding, but we're not seeing the blood. Can you speak to your mic, please?
Yes, you're bleeding. Mr. Speaker, thank you for pointing out that, but let me just go ahead with my submission, Mr. Speaker, with your kind permission. Mr. Speaker, on the one hand, Mr. Speaker, here we are on a constant drive to generate and increase our internally generated revenue. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the very content of this motion, there are two key issues, Mr. Speaker. One, Jimmy has brought to our attention the need to increase activities in the lighter terminal. The second is the need to offload most of the cargoes that have been so dumped there. And he has offered a solution that these importers can be given a 50% waiver. Mr. Speaker, I think this is very critical, and these are the two areas we need to look at. There is no need, it doesn't make any human sense, to keep dumping these cargoes, not generating any funds on a zero revenue level. We can as well let the importers pay just 50% of the accrued charges that are due on these cargoes, so that we can increase our revenues. The second point is, being a lighter terminal, Mr. Speaker, there is no need overloading the other two terminals. These lighter terminals are meant to take care of the smaller cargoes. So we can actually, instead of allowing them to start overloading themselves with so many activities in those two terminals, and then allowing them to have excess charges of 90 days in excess, and then dumping them in the lighter terminals. We can mandate committees.
Honorable Salami. Honorable Salami, order, please.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Speaker. We can mandate committees to increase their oversight function by ensuring that these cargoes are moved from these other two terminals to the lighter terminal to increase the activities of the terminal to generate more funds. So I think it is the duty of the relevant committees to improve on their oversight function with respect to this very motion, Mr. Speaker. I so submit.
Honorable Jagaba.
The Right Honorable Speaker,
Honorable Hassan,
our performing and wonderful speaker. My name is Honorable Jagaba Adams Jagaba, a member representing Kachia Kadalbo Federal Constituency, Kaduna State. Mr. Speaker, I am a member transiting from APC to PDP, yet we are now. Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Osai, can you move that your motion? Okay, I hope the day you will announce you move that motion.
Honorable Jagaba, continue.
Mr. Speaker, the motion, I rise actually to support the motion raised by my friend here and colleague. Mr. Speaker, one of the major problems we still have in our ports today, it is congestion. Policies after policies, committees after committees, recommendations after recommendations, but our ports are still congested. There's no reason, Mr. Speaker, to spend billions for these slight waterways, and yet we are not utilizing it. It may trace this out to note, sir, that it's still easier to ship goods for Nigeria to ship goods through neighboring countries. It's easier to clear up to this moment than Nigeria. So by making or activating this waterways, I believe is going to help boost the economy, not just that of Lagos or its constituency. It's going to boost the economy of the nation. And attached to that, Mr. Speaker, by the time we reactivate this aspect, all our dry inland ports, we can now use other ports to easily clear those goods or cargoes to our dry inland ports cut across the country. By so doing, it's going to boost our economy, it's going to create employment, and Mr. Speaker, it's going to boost our revenue base in the country. So I support this, and I urge my colleagues to allow this motion pass as it is, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Chairman, Security of Coastal Trade and Business. Sheikh Bago.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. I also I am Mohammed Umar Bago, member representing the people of Chanchaga Federal Constituency, Mr. Speaker. I'm from Niger State. I want to lean my voice in support of this motion. But Mr. Speaker, we have to understand these things in the way they are in the proper perspective. The Ikorodu Light Terminal was created as a transit terminal. Unfortunately, it was supposed to take care of specifically building materials. When they come into Nigeria, they are taken to Ikorodu Light Terminal so that they can move on train to hinterland, dry seaports, and so on and so forth. The Committee of Port and Harbour, in its wisdom, have funded the issues of dry ports, and we have commissioned one or two, and more are coming on board. So, Mr. Speaker, the issue of dredging of the Ikorodu Light Terminal is very important. However, we should first look at the rail connectivity between Ikorodu and the inland ports and the dry ports. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, this motion is timely, and it is coming at a time when budget is being considered for Nigerian Ministry of Transportation and Nigerian Port Authority and Nigerian Railway Corporation. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to enjoy my colleagues here to support this motion and let it pass through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my colleagues. While supporting the motion, I just want to briefly state the reason behind the government policy that led to the establishment of this particular lighter port. The definition is not the issue. The dredging also is not the issue. The government decided in its wisdom that because of the congestion at the port and the fact that there is a narrow corridor to bring out all the heavy loaded trucks from the port to the larger Nigerian nation, because of the disuse of Port Harcourt, Calabar, and Cocoa Port, in the wisdom of the Ministry of Transport, they decided together with the Ministry of, there was an interministerial agency that came up with the idea of setting up dry docks all over the country. This is one of them. There are several others in Katina, Funtua, and is to be operated by private sector people. Now, it is to ease business for importers and as well as exporters. In this case, what Honorable is saying, Honorable Benson from Lagos is saying, is that because the port, you don't have a lot of overtime cargo. There isn't much containers to move into this particular port in Ikorodu. So it's operating at minimum capacity. What he's suggesting is that we should make it an export terminal. It can be made an export terminal so that the customs, the immigration, quarantine services, everything will be done within that confine. And then the containers will be sealed, checked, so that when it gets to the port, the containers will not be dropped at the port. Once the ships and everything is ready, it moves straight for the purpose of logistics and all that. This is the reason behind the setting up of all these terminals all over the country. It is also in several locations in northern Nigeria. It is private sector led, and I want us to support that we include export as part of the purposes of setting up these things. You remember that it is in that same spirit that the federal government decided to come up with 5 other ports on the River Niger. The one at Barrow, which you, Mr. Speaker, is passionate about, and the one in Onitsha, Lokoja, and I think 2 other locations. Now, these terminals, it is to ensure that everybody doesn't leave the entire country to move into Lagos just because they want to export cocoa, groundnut, and heights and skin, and the like. So the heights and skin association or industry in Kano, they can all come together to the dry dock in Kano. The customs will be there. They will check their containers. As far as they are concerned, they finish that part of the export business. It will be sealed. Once it then becomes the responsibility of the shipping company to ensure that it gets to the foreign companies that have ordered for such consignment. So really, this is the reason why these terminals were set up. And the Committee on Port and Harbour, we want you to look into this when you are doing your investigation, so that you can designate those that are ready to be used as export terminals. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Ports and Harbors.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. Like all those who have spoken, I'd like to support this very important motion moved by my young brother, Babajimi. And actually, he is opened an avenue for us as a committee and as a country to address our waterways infrastructural challenges. So I will use the lighter terminal in Ikorodu as an entry point to first plead with this House, especially the Committee on Rules and Business, to help us pass or bring for consideration the amendment, the repeal, and the enactment of the newer laws. Because without that, what Patrick said, which is actually the truth, that both the river ports, the inland container dry ports, and the transit parks, which are supposed to be private sector driven, will go like the concessions we did with the Nigerian ports control terminals. So this report has been lined with the House for about 2 months now. And I think because the Senate had passed its own, and we did work to bring this report, where all the stakeholders met and agreed that for us to run some of these terminals and the ports, like the western ports and the eastern ports, and allow them to develop at the same time, and create the employment that he has so articulately canvassed, and also decongest Lagos. That we need to create a legal framework that protects Nigeria as a country, but also protects the investor. What is wrong with the laws that were amended, the Nigerian Ports Authority Act, that we propose an amendment and has gone through all the considerations and is waiting for the consideration of the bill, is that it does not protect Nigeria enough. What is wrong with the newer act as it is presently concerned is that there is no provision for this dredging that is very key to be funded by private sectors, and they can raise money from what their activities. Because we actually do not have existing seaports in Nigeria. Almost all the ports in Nigeria presently operational river ports. And like Patrick said, and most commend Mr. Speaker, because on a Saturday morning he went with the committee to Barrow, driving through very, very bad roads to emphasize the importance of these river ports. On the river port, the big opening ceremony was held yesterday. But I'm convinced that it will not work if we do not first create the legal framework, which is just awaiting us to either agree, pass what will agree with the Senate, or for whatever purpose. It will be a very landmark achievement for this House to unleash the potentials of the maritime sector. Having said that, I think that for Nisha River Port, for the Uguta River Port, for Lokoja River Port, for Baro River Port, for the lighter terminals, even for the existing ports to make any sense, we have looked at the budgets of these agencies that we oversight, and we discovered that about 70% of the funds go into dredging. And we feel that it is not sustainable. It is something we need to bring the private sector, which is also willing. A lot of foreign companies know that Nigeria is a big market, a big destination, and we are losing cargo to other countries because we do not. The lighter terminal doesn't really need big vessels getting there, because with the waterways that go to Ikorodu, all we need is barges, and whether they are going to be gravitational, whether they need to go by tugboats, we need to make that terminal very, very active and put it to the use for which it was created. But much more importantly is that we need to encourage cargo inflow. As it is now, what we are suffering is the inefficiency of our port system. If you look at the cargo throughput that is coming to the country, especially from the height of recession to now, to what was coming, we're operating at about 40%. So if we have some efficient distribution, there is no way we will be suffering congestion. But even if we get to 10%, and we don't have these other ports and terminals being put to use, so I commend Baba Jimmy Benson, and I also say that this committee has a copy of the roadmap that the Nigerian Ports Authority have written. But we have a law that we must make that will enable whatever we decide today become operational. Why it's not operational is that what the Senate passed is not what the House is recommending, and I just plead that the House do pass this law and enable us, as we go to work, have a legal framework to challenge the operators, to allow private sector money to enter this system. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Hassan, then Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable colleagues, Hassan Saleh, I represent the people of Ado, of Adibu, of Pokufera constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Benue. Mr. Speaker, I rise to commend my brother, Honorable Babajime, and also to support this motion. A lot of people have spoken, and of course, in favor of the motion, the need for us to support this motion and approve the prayers. I am going to come on the aspects. Mine has to do with the aspects of the economics, if we allow this motion to fly. Mr. Speaker, we all know that our major export to Nigeria is the exportation of our crude oil. And the reason why that sector is very efficient is because the vessels that convey or carry out our crude oil don't use any of our main ports. That is why we see that kind of efficiency, because most of the vessels that come to take out our crude oil and gas operate from body terminals. Mr. Speaker, it will interest you to know that due to the congestion in Apapa and Tinker Island port today, Nigeria is losing at least 3 billion naira every day. It will take a truck carrying a container into the port about 10 days from any part of Lagos into the port. A journey that is supposed to be like 10 miles will take 10 days because of the bad roads and the congestion. And if we are to encourage exports out of Nigeria, agricultural exports, for instance, a lot of exporters are suffering. Suffering in the sense that they go through the problem of taking cargo from up country to export warehouses around the ports. And then when they eventually succeed in even getting their containers into the port, it takes between 4 to 6 weeks for their cargoes to be shipped, and probably take another 3 weeks for them to get documents to be paid. So if you see the downtime, we are looking at about 10 to 12 weeks for exporters to have their business turned around. I see this as an opportunity, if given the House, if the House approves, as an opportunity for the Nigerian exporters to increase their volume of transaction, and also this will also create opportunity for other ancillary businesses in this inland port. So I want us to support this motion and support the prayers so that our country can be better for it. So submit, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my honorable colleagues. I am Honorable Daniel Reyniju. I represent Warri Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, first of all, let me appreciate and commend the mover of this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, having listened to the Chairman, Ports and Harbour, and other contributors on this issue, I will be very brief with my own contribution. And my contribution also will come by way of an amendment to one of the prayers of this motion. Mr. Speaker, like I have always said, and I will continue to say, that the maritime potential of this great country can compete very favorably with our oil, which is the mainstay presently of the economy of this nation. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that we have underutilized or undertapped the maritime potentiality of this great country. Mr. Speaker, what the mover of this motion or the motion is trying to state is no doubt an important one to us if we must diversify from our mainstay, which is oil, into other sectors, agri, and also our marine sectors. Mr. Speaker, my own amendment, which I wouldn't mind to bring in at this point, would have been that the Ports and Harbour should use this opportunity to look at the possibility of looking at the workability or the functionality of those ports in the eastern area. Mr. Speaker, those ports, as a child growing up, for example, in Delta State, Mr. Speaker, we have 4 ports in Delta, 2 in Warri, very modern ports. 2 in Warri, 1 in Burutu, and 1 in Sapele, all very modern ports. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, I do not think any of these 4 ports attracts more than 2 vessels every 3 months to this country. Mr. Speaker, the most important thing and the questions we must ask is why did we have to invest into such huge and very attractive sector without actually building on them to enable us generate revenue? There are some countries that has just 1 single port, and their mainstay is on that port alone. Why do we then have up to 4, for example, in Delta? In Port Harcourt is 2, Calabar is 1 in the eastern area, but none of these are functioning. Mr. Speaker, I think it will be very important, now that we are saying the committee should look into it and then bring a memorandum to the House, for us to just include in the resolution 1 to add that the states of the eastern ports should also be looked into, so that we can holistically look at why our ports are not working, why the ports are not visually working in that of Delta State which serves up to about 4 to 5 ports, is just the dredging of the Escravos bar mouth. And the last time that was touched was in the 50s. So, Mr. Speaker, like I've said here before when I raised the motion on this issue, there is no road in this country today that has not been refurbished or rehabilitated in the last 50 years. So the same way too, you have the Escravos bar mouth serving as the same way the roads serve us in our land transport. Mr. Speaker, I haven't said this. Like I said, as a child growing up, I used to know that the ports in Warri alone was generating close to 2,000 employments for the people of that area and Delta State as a whole. But as we speak, the ports are down, and I think if we have to key into this opportunity so that these ports can be, operational. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Last contributor will be Honorable Toby Okechukwu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. Mr. Speaker, my name is Toby Okechukwu. I represent an area of Wojiriba Federal Constituency from Enugu State. Mr. Speaker, this motion, which deals essentially in a global sense, the use to which we put our infrastructure, is very critical. And I believe strongly that Honorable Daniel has essentially touched and genuinely done so on the core and the responsibility of the state and its agencies to be responsive and responsible in handling our infrastructure. Sometimes we think that building a project is an end in itself. The maintenance of it is not thought of. The future use of it, when a particular situation that has given rise to its construction, elapses, we forget that it is important to also renew its use or subject its use for another purpose. What this touches essentially is that there is a total dysfunction with regard to our port facilities. If you check most of the inland ports as are today, they are not in use. Like you mentioned, the eastern ports, the collateral consequence of most of the ports in Port Harcourt, in Warri, the collateral consequence of their not being in use is the job losses we experience. Mr. Speaker, you remember that about a month ago or 2 months ago, Nigeria, in its effort to export agricultural products, exported yam to the United States. What happened? By the time it got there, it was rotten. And that is because you go to Lagos, at the end of the day, you spend like Hassan said, in 10 miles, you spend about 10 days trying to access the ports. By the time you go, the heat that is generated would have damaged the yam irreparably. And when you look at it properly, the 2,000 jobs he talked about, you've not talked about the losses that is consequential for people in northeastern Nigeria that export products through the eastern ports. The easy access that you would have had through those ports. So, whereas I support this motion, it is also critical for the committee to subject to scrutiny. What is it that is responsible that we could have about 10 ports in eastern Nigeria and none of them is in use? When I was growing up, I know people used to import cars. They used to import a lot of facilities. The Warri refinery, the Port Harcourt refinery, if you are importing any raw material or any technical equipment, it's through that port. But now, we know, based on our policies, fiscal policy changes of government, that we are not optimizing the use of our ports in even Lagos. And that is what has led to some kind of inactivity in the lighter terminal. But more importantly, let us look at it in concert with other port facilities, with the other inland terminals, and see whether the reason detailed for their establishment is still valid, or we address what is the core problem of dealing with dysfunctional infrastructure and underutilization. If it's security, we deal with it. And this leads me to the general malaise in the type of infrastructure we see in eastern flank of this country. From Maiduguri down to Calabar to Port Harcourt, no rail system. From Maiduguri down to eastern flank of this country, you don't have any serious network of roads. And now you talk about the ports there. They are not in existence. Not because they are not physically there, they are not in use. So I believe strongly that the chairman of the committee and the committee members should totally and holistically look at it. Because when you look at what is the reason for us to have problems in eastern and northeast, in southeast, in south, militancy, IPOB, Boko Haram, it is inactivity, economic lack of activity in these areas. And that is because the infrastructure in those places are not in use. So I completely support this motion, but it should be looked at in concert with what is happening with our facilities in other parts of the country. Thank you. I show support.
We have two amendments. First is from Honorable Chinda Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues. Kingsley Chinda. I represent Obiabo Federal Constituency. I'm an Ikure man from River State. Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, I propose that we amend the motion by deleting all the prayers and substituting it with a single prayer to read thus: that we mandate the House committees on ports, harbor and waterways, customs and excise, and legislative compliance to carry out a full investigation of the problems and operations of the Ikorodu lighter terminal and other lighter terminals in the country, with a vision of making them more effective, and report back to the House in 6 weeks for further legislative action. I so move.
Does that cover Honorable Daniel Reneju's this thing?
Yes, sir. And other lighter terminal and ports in the country.
Okay. Any seconder? Honorable Ima Ewu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Manuel Makuji, representing that federal constituency. I second the amendment moved by my humble friend.
Okay, so that amendment also covers Honorable Daniel Reneju's amendment, which is here. And I'll put the question. Those in favor of the amendment say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. So Honorable Dan, your amendment has been carried. It's covered, yes. Those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye. Those against it, say nay. Ayes have it. Ninth order of the day is a motion on call for a phased ban on the importation of fish and fish products into Nigeria, standing in the name of Honorable Tasil Lawale Raji. Honorable Raji is now invited to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Wale Raji, member representing a peripheral constituency of Lagos State. I stand to move
the motion on call for a phased ban on the importation of fish and fish products into Nigeria. The House notes that the diversification of the economy away from the crude oil through key sectors such as agriculture remains pivotal to the realization of the economic recovery and growth plan of the present administration. Also notes that the fisheries subsector, which is a vital component of Nigeria's agriculture and the national economy, accounting for about 4% of the country's gross domestic product, has remained largely underdeveloped despite having the potential to provide cheap sources of protein, income, employment, and foreign exchange. Aware that local production from artisanal fishing, aquaculture, and industrial captures estimated at about 800,000 metric tons accounts for only 30% of the total annual fish demand, estimated at 2.7 million metric tons. Also aware that Nigeria has over the years resorted to importation to meet the deficit of about 1.9 million metric tons in domestic fish supply at an estimated cost of $625 million in foreign exchange annually. Further notes that the escalating demand for foreign exchange for fish importation is not sustainable in the light of the huge pressure on the country's foreign reserves and fluctuating earnings from crude oil. Concerned that Nigeria has now become a dumping ground for all manners of frozen fish, most of which are unwholesome in quality and highly detrimental to the health of the consumers. Cognizant that with the abundant marine and inland fisheries resources comprising 923,768 square kilometers of land area, 47,934 square kilometers continental shelf, 853 kilometers of coastline, network of rivers, floodplain, natural and man-made lakes, Nigeria has all it takes to become self-sufficient in fish production and also become a major hub of fish exploitation in the West African sub-region. Convinced that the federal government needs to vigorously pursue the goal of self-sufficiency in fish production so as to ensure food security and reserve for export. Results: to mandate the committees on agricultural production and services and water resources to collaborate with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Nigeria Customs Service, and other stakeholders to develop a policy framework for the implementation of a phased ban on the importation of fish and fish products so as to create an enabling environment for increased private sector investment in the fisheries subsector such that Nigeria can become self-sufficient in fish production within a period of 4 years and report back within 4 weeks for further legislative action. Mr. Speaker, I so move. Thank you.
Second, Honorable Emma Ewu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Emmanuel Makojiogo. I represent Ida Federal Constituency of Kogi State. I rise to second the motion ably moved by Honorable Raji.
Honorable Raji, please lead the debate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
we all know that fish is an important source of protein for human beings. And because of its nutritional value, it is highly recommended as a healthy source of protein for consumption by both young and old. In Nigeria today, the annual demand for fish, as earlier presented in my motion, is estimated at about 2.7 million metric tons. But unfortunately, the local production from all sources is estimated at about 800,000. And this has created a gap and an opportunity, for to promote local production. It is unfortunate that right now we spend a total of $625 million US in foreign exchange to import fish into this country. But unfortunately, the quality of fish that we import into this country is questionable. Many of them are rotting. And unfortunately, again, Nigeria has been turned into a dumping ground, for all sorts of fish and fish products. But we can convert this situation to an opportunity to be self-sufficient in fish production. We have what it takes in terms of land area, in terms of coast line, and the beauty of it is that there is no part of Nigeria that we cannot produce fish. We have a teeming population of young men and women in Nigeria that are unemployed today. We can convert this situation to an opportunity to create jobs and also attain food sufficiency in the country. We have done it with rice. Today, some years back, we spent huge sum in foreign exchange in importing rice into this country. But with the determination of the federal government, we are close to self-sufficiency in rice production. We can repeat the same in the area of fish production. And that is why I now call on my colleagues to support this motion that we embark on a phased ban on importation of fish into this country, such that within 4 years, it is possible for us to be self-sufficient in fish production. It is now time for us to continue to look inward in solving our food demand, meeting the demand for food in this country. And if we don't start, we will never get there. So, and this is the time for us to start. We should produce what we eat and consume what we produce. So, Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, I call on all of you to support this motion in the interest of our country. Thank you, and God bless you.
Honorable Santos.
Mr. Speaker, my highly esteemed colleagues, I'm Sergius Ose Ogun. I represent Eastern Southeast, Eastern Northeast, and I'm from Edo State. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the mover of this motion, Honorable Raji, my very good friend. Mr. Speaker, I actually appreciate the fact that he has not said we should ban the importation of fish, but we should face it, which is basically what the government is doing with rice today. And I strongly believe that when we do this, in a very short while, we're going to be self-sufficient in fish production. But also to quickly add that if we have the regulatory bodies doing their work in this country, we will not have issues, but to be able to deliver on this mandate. We have the Institute of Oceanography and all of them. What are they really doing? Every year they come. We were supposed to have met with them yesterday, one of my committees, research institutions. If the government can fund these institutions, there is no reason with 47,934 kilometers continental shelf, 853 kilometers of coastline, network of rivers, floodplain, natural and man-made lakes. There is no reason why we should be importing fish in this country. I also just again want to add that when we do this, we're going to be self-sufficient in fish production in this country, and like my colleague mentioned, it's a very rich source of protein. Today we are crying because of the herdsmen, and we are eating cow that we don't know their source. They are not even healthy. So once again, I want to thank the mover of this motion and to say we appreciate this, and to urge everyone to support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable, okay, Aminu Shehu Shagari, they will move to this room.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Aminu Shehu Shagari, I represent the Abu Shagari constituency in Sokoto State. I want to lend my voice in support of this motion, which seeks to mandate the Committee on Agriculture and Water Resources to interface with Ministry of Agriculture, Central Bank of Nigeria, Nigeria Customs Service, and stakeholders to develop a framework which will now gradually phase out or ban the importation of fish. I took my time to read out the prayer so that my honorable colleagues would understand what the prayer is saying, because I've heard that people are saying the motion is not popular. The motion does not seek to ban importation of fish, please. It seeks to gradually, it seeks to mandate these committees to look into phasing out of importation of fish and report back within 4 weeks. That is what it seeks to do. And I think we all agree with me that we need to diversify our economy and look inwards. And part of doing that is the ban on importation of fish. Only yesterday I was watching a program on National Geographic Channel, and I saw how these international fishermen use chemicals, poisonous chemicals, to preserve fish meant for export to this part of the world. So, and I think we would all be concerned of our health, and that is why we have all kinds of diseases cropping up, prevalence of cancer everywhere, which could not be, I'm sure it could be connected to issues such as this. So I urge my colleagues to please support this motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Chika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My dear colleagues, I'm Abubakar Chika Adamu. I represent Shirora Kumuya Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, I'm from Niger State. Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, I want to thank the mover of the motion, my long-time friend, Honorable Raji, for bringing this motion, which is very timely and which requires speedy action. Mr. Speaker, even if foreign exchange is given to an importer free, I don't think we deserve the importation of fish into this country. Mr. Speaker, we need to conserve our health and we need to protect our job. In conserving our health, Mr. Speaker, most of these fish, as said by my elder brother, Honorable Shagari here, are poisonous. We are not adding any value to our health by importing this fish. Mr. Speaker, I dare anybody, and I stand to be contradicted by anybody whosoever. This fish that are imported into Nigeria, you cannot import same fish to Europe. And this is to tell you the poisonous nature and the unhealthy nature of this fish imported into Nigeria. However, Nigeria have the capacity to produce fish that will be sufficient for our citizens. But here we are, allowing people to go out of job in the name of having an imported material that does not add value to our health and our living in this nation. And with this, Mr. Speaker, for me, I have an amendment there on your table. The transition period requested by the mover of the motion is too long. Mr. Speaker, 4 years is too long to have transition to exit from importing fish. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish to now, with your permission, carry on as I am standing the amendment I submitted before you. Mr. Speaker, I said, okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker, thank you, my dear colleagues. This is my only contribution.
Honorable Ima.
Thank you, my right honorable speaker. I'm Emmanuel Makoji, who represents Ida Federal Constituency of Kogi State. Mr. Speaker, I think this motion is a reasonably thought motion that I think we need to reason about it very well. It has to do with entrepreneurship, and that is one area that in Nigeria we have not really maximized. We want easy way of doing things. The socio-economic advantage of this motion is very high. The reason is that we are even in a government that have this policy of diversification. And even more diversify, I believe in this theory of comparative advantage, that we identify the area that we can optimally produce. And I think fisheries is one of the areas that we can optimize. So in that respect, let us think on how we can maximize our production in fishery. And if we must go into the optimization, Mr. Speaker, we must have to protect the growing entrepreneurs, the growing enterprises in fishery, because they cannot compete with the large-scale industries of fish producers outside Nigeria. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to encourage our local producers of fish so that we can boast as one of the major producers of fish in the world. We can do it. We should not always think that it's always impossible to create a change. And one of the changes I think we need to do is this area of fisheries, that God has blessed us. There is no environment in Nigeria that fish cannot be produced. If we have such opportunities, why are we wasting these potentials? Then why are we encouraging importation? Mr. Speaker, so I want to encourage the members to support this motion. We are lagging behind in the area of employment. This is an opportunity to create self-reliance and create employment opportunities for our teaming graduates and youths and women that are not engaged. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this is a laudable opportunity, and emphatically I want to say that this is a gradual process, like the motion has been made. It is gradual. It is not a straitjacket motion that must start now. But let us develop our minds. Let us believe now that with the research and study that the committees have been asked to go into the study, we hopefully get the results of opinions from critical stakeholders, and at the end of the day, they come out with a policy that could be sustaining. And at the end of the day, this is a long-term project that is useful to the society.
Mr. Speaker, on this note, I stand to support this motion that is highly thought and reasonable. Thank you.
Honorable Buba Yakub.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Yusuf Buba Yakub. I represent Gombe on Federal Constituency from Adamawa State. Mr. Speaker, this motion is timely. I want to sincerely thank the mover of this motion because right now, as I speak, I have over 100,000 kilograms of fish in my ponds, and my major challenge is exploitation by the middlemen because of the importation of fish, bad type of fish into our country that tends to discourage us farmers from continuing. Mr. Speaker, our major problem in this country is youth unemployment. Over 70% of our youth are unemployed. And fish alone, the complete value chain of fish alone, will take care of 50% of this unemployment problem we have in the country. Mr. Speaker, I want to go a little bit technical. Nigeria is one of the countries that have the best environment for fish farming. We can hatch all the fish we require in a day within 24 hours. If you take catfish, for instance, it only takes 24 hours to hatch the fries of catfish. And within 4 to 6 weeks, you can grow them to fingerlings. It is only in Nigeria and some African countries that you can grow your fish to table size within 4 to 6 months because of the temperature of our country. If you go to other countries, it will take you 1 year or more than 1 year to grow fish to 1 kg or to table size. So we have all the advantages in growing fish in this country. So I want to support that the importation of fish be banned because, as other colleagues have said, health-wise it is not good because these countries use all sorts of preservative chemicals to preserve this fish they export to us. And some of these fish stay on the high sea for so many months. And this is a product we can produce, we can process, and we can have it on our tables fresh. For example, even tilapia. In my backyard, I have ponds that have tilapia. They produce on their own. You don't need to go to the hatchery to hatch. When you just drop some few tilapia in the water, they multiply in their thousands within a very short time. So, Mr. Speaker, this motion is so timely, very important, and it needs all the necessary support so that importation of fish can be banned, and I am sure we can meet up all the demands and even start exporting within a year or thereabout. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to make 1 or 2 contributions in support of this very timely, very well-crafted, beautifully crafted motion. And luckily, the mover of the motion also comes from an area surrounded by water. So he knows exactly what he's talking about. The issue here is about phasing out, not a complete ban, but phasing out the importation of fish. Mr. Speaker, for years now, this country, we have talked about diversification of the economy. And most times we talk about it, but we do not practicalize it. Now, this motion, if it's going to be a reality, it is a step, another step towards diversification of our economy. It is clear, and it surprises me when we say we are surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, the sea, rivers, and all of that, with abundance of fish in the water, and yet we're importing what we have locally.
It just does not make any economic sense. It's the same thing as oil. Nigeria is blessed with oil that comes from the ground, and yet we're importing oil. Those two things just do not, it just doesn't add up. And that's why this motion, I believe, is a very timely and a very good motion. I'm not going to address the issue of employment opportunities and the issue of to fish farmers and the rest of it, the conservation of our foreign exchange and all of that. So, Mr. Speaker, like I said, it's just in support. Most of the issues have been raised, and I believe that if we cannot, just beyond this motion, if we can actually make it a law, bring up a bill or some sort of bill that would place fish on the list of items that cannot be imported, I think we'll go way into diversifying our economy from just being a mono-product economy, oil, to agriculture and fish farming. Thank you.
Chairman, Agricultural Production.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, my name is Mohamed Tai Monguno. I represent Martin Monguno, Genzei, Federal Constituency of Borno State. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, in tandem with all the issues raised by the sponsor of this motion, the Federal Minister of Agriculture has already taken steps to Mr. Speaker, honorable members, as I was saying, in tandem with the issues raised by the sponsor of this motion, the Federal Minister of Agriculture has already taken steps towards first ban of importation of fish into the country. Even this year, the number of licenses that was issued for the importation of fish into the country has been reduced by about 30%. The plan is for the Federal Ministry of Agriculture to ultimately ban the importation of fish into this country by 2019, so that as they face the ban on importation of fish into the country, they will be encouraging domestic production to bring it off with the requirement of the country, with a view to saving millions of dollars that we are using for the importation of fish that ordinarily should have been used for our critical infrastructure needs and also create the much needed employment in the country, particularly among our teen unemployed youth. So what this motion seeks to do is to further give teeth to what the executive is already doing by way of legislative intervention. And I commend the sponsor of this motion, who happens to be a very active member of my committee. He's a fisheries expert and also a one-time permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture with the Lagos State government, for his vision in the sponsorship of this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any more contribution? Okay, Honorable Patel Sadu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my colleagues. I rise to also support this, essentially, the views canvassed by this motion, especially because I happen to know and I happen to understand the potentials of Nigeria as a major fishing destination for the world. As a matter of fact, Nigeria has about the best species of fishes for the international market. That we should not be talking about banning importation of fish. We should be talking about encouraging the capacity of Nigerian fish industry to not only practice effective fishing and fisheries, but also export to the foreign markets. But why I raise, Mr. Speaker, also is the observance and the several petitions that have come to us, especially during the cabotage law review, on the abuses to which our fishing, the fishes in Nigerian waterways have been subjected to by the big fishing companies all over the world, who have noticed the weaknesses and the low capacity of indigenous fish trawler owners to first compete at the global level, but two, to also get the fishes that are allowed to be fished globally within Nigeria. What I'm saying essentially is that Nigeria is suffering a problem where big trawlers from outside the country are feasting on our reserve fish. There are fishes that by international standards are being preserved so that they don't get extinct. This happens also to be the fishes that command the best prices in the international market. But because of the weaknesses in our waterways, especially the security by the Navy and the Maritime Security, and even the Department of Fisheries, we noticed that while the indigenous ship owners lack the capital to acquire bigger vessels, those who are having the big vessels are coming to Nigeria to fish. They do spend most of their time fishing for the wrong species. The species that are not allowed to be fished in Europe and America are the fishes that are being kind of captured and wasted by these foreign powers. So I plead that in this motion, we are not just going to encourage our departments and ministry, and especially the relevant committees, to work together to make sure that the fishing industry is reactivated and made to earn revenue for Nigeria by satisfying the local market, but also to be able to compete internationally. Two, that we should be able to stop the rogue fishing companies from coming to Nigeria to practice what they cannot practice in other parts of the world, where they come here to take our prized and disappearing fish species to foreign countries because of the weaknesses in our monitoring and security system. Where I'm concerned is that the motion is seeking that the House committees do generate a policy framework. And I think these committees should urge the ministries they oversight to generate the policy framework that will guide the committee in preparing a legal framework where that is needed. If not, just like I had pleaded earlier, we should, as a parliament, pass the recently concluded inland and coastal shipping, so-called cabotage law, that we finished amending, whose report also has been lying in this house, and which I've gotten assurances will be considered very soon. So I challenge the chairman of the House Committee on Agriculture and the other committees to impress upon the executive, because it's more of the executive's function to generate a policy view of what the particular government wants to achieve, and who give them the legal framework that protect their policy, than for us as a parliament to generate the policy. Two, that we do not confine ourselves to satisfying our local markets, because we are one of the best fishing destinations in the world. Just that we, like most East Nigeria, we are not protecting that which we have, allowing unscrupulous fishers and fish mongers to come to Nigerian fishing waterways and capture our the kind of fish that have been banned from being fished in all other parts of the world. So I plead that, apart also from this committee, maybe I will do an amendment that the Navy, especially the Committee on Navy, we have to work with the Navy. The Committee on the Master will have to work with the Master to protect the Nigerian fishing waterways, because the vessels that are coming from outside and those who are fishing in the fishing in the Nigerian fishing waters are not interested in the future of Nigerian fishing industry. That's why they are capturing fishes that have been banned and are being preserved for the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support that this motion be taken.
Honorable Darlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and distinguished colleagues. My name is Darlington Mokocha. I represent Isialangwa North, Isialangwa South Federal Constituency, I'm from Abia State. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion considering the importance of this motion within our society today. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about partial ban on importation of fishes into this country so as to help the internal production of fishes within our shores. But I want to sincerely say this, that it will be of great importance if the Federal Ministry of Agriculture will sincerely support the Research and Development Department of Agricultural Institutions so that both the subsistence farmers and the commercial farmers of fishes in this country will produce fishes that are of international standard so that whatever thing that's being imported into this country, name of any kind of fish, will meet that international standard and at the same time will be enough for our people's consumption. Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that we are talking about ban or partial ban on this, it's important that apart from the economic importance, this mass production of fishes will generate into this our economy. We can still talk about the security aspect because one of the problems we're having with the harassment today because we don't have a veritable source of protein in large quantity like fishes production into the country, because if we produce enough fishes in this country for internal consumption, I think it will serve as an alternative to either meat or beef, which means that when we have enough of that, the quantity of animals that we find, cows that we find within our environment and areas, their grazing areas, will be quite limited. So it's not only on the economic aspect. I think as well, the security aspect should be considered, because if we produce enough of fishes here, as source of protein, and we have it enough here, we will have enough to contend as an alternative to the production of beef and animals. Therefore, I'm supporting this motion, and I'm saying let the Research and Development Department of the institutions of agriculture be highly encouraged so that we can produce fishes that are of international quality and standard in our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any more contribution? I'll put the question. Those, no, we have an amendment here from Honorable Dr. Pat Asadu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My first amendment is that this House mandates the relevant committees to impress on the relevant ministries to develop the policy framework based upon which our legislative framework can be developed, not for the Parliament to develop the policy framework, because it is not an executive function to develop policy that to guide a particular government. What we can do is for them to develop the policy that guide our work. That is my first amendment, Mr. Speaker. I so propose.
Honorable Chris Azubaku.
Right Honorable Speaker, my distinguished colleagues, my name is Honorable Chris Azubaku, I represent Plenary North, Plenary South, and the Kusuko Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the amendment that is moved by Honorable Pat Asadu that will request that agencies that are concerned do develop the policy framework that will help us to achieve what we have to do. I so second.
So the amendment is here. Those in favor of the amendment say aye. Those against it say nay. The ayes have it. No. Okay, we have another amendment from Honorable Abubakar Chika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Abubakar Chika, I represent Shore Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Niger State. Mr. Speaker, my amendment is in respect of exiting the importation of fish, that instead of the framework for the for existing the importation to be 4 years, I therefore suggest it should be 2 years. More so, from the submission we did had from Honorable Mongunu, which says already there is a plan that by 2019 fish importation will stop in Nigeria. And based on that and my own thinking, I therefore suggest that the framework should be designed instead of 4 years, it should be 2 years for existing the importation of fish into Nigeria. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chika, did you move any amendment as such, or you just spoke?
Mr. Speaker, my amendment is that instead of the 4 years, as it is stated on the resolve in the motion, that it should now be 2 years.
Instead of 4 years, 2 years. That's Chika's amendment. Any seconder? Seconder to the amendment. Honorable Buba Yakub.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Yusuf Buba Yakub. I represent Gobi of Federal Constituency from Adamawa State. I rise to second the amendment moved by my colleague, Honorable Chika. I so second.
Those in favor of Chika's amendment say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Honorable Pat Asado had 2 amendments. We just took one. I thought that he moved the 2. I will recognize him to move the other amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. My second amendment has to do with the protection of the Nigerian waters from rogue shipping companies and other fish trawler operators. And the amendment is that the House Committee on Maritime Safety, Education and Administration and the House Committee on Navy do bring all the necessary ways and means on the relevant forces to protect the Nigerian fishing waters from the gross abuse to which it is subjected to now by non-indigenous ship operators. I so propose, Mr. Speaker.
Seconder, Honorable Jibril Duku. Aisha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Honorable Aisha Jibril Duku, member representing Dukula for the Federal Constituency. I rise to second the amendment as moved by Dr. Pat Asado. I so second.
Those in favor of the amendment say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Those in favor of the motion as amended say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Move to consideration of reports. Chairman, Rules and Business, are we going to consideration of reports? Because I can't see the DS on the seat.
Well, I think
okay, there's committee on supply before, so we will move in that order and see whether he will be back before then. 10th order of the day, honorable colleagues, consideration bill for an act to amend the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 in order to extend the implementation year of the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 from 31st December 2017 to 31st March 2018. Honorable members will recall that the bill was committed to the Committee of Supply on Wednesday, 24 January 2018. The leader will move for its consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. consideration of a bill for an act to amend the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 in order to extend the implementation year of the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 from 31st December 2017 to 31st March 2018, HB 1294. I so move.
Seconder, Honorable Gaza.
Right, Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, my name is Honorable Gaza Jonathan Befi, and I represent the people of Karu, Kefi, Kokona Federal Constituency of Nasarawa State. I rise to support the motion for the bill ably moved by the leader of the House. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. So, Leader, would you please move that will resolve the Committee of Supply in order to consider the report?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to move that this House dissolve the Committee of Supply for the consideration of reports. I so move.
Rules of business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion as ably moved by the leader of the House. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. The ayes have it. The House hereby resolve into Committee of Supply to consider the report. colleagues, dealing with an act to amend the Federal Capital Territory, a bill for an act to amend the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 in order to extend the implementation year of the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 from the 31st December 2017 to 31st March 2018, or until the coming into force of the 2018 Appropriation Act, whichever occurs earlier, and for related matters. So this is a one-line amendment consisting of just two clauses. Don't think we should bother ourselves too much as to listening to any short or long explanation as to what those two clauses mean. So I'll go ahead and put the question, except we want to hear explanation on this matter. I think it's a straightforward thing. Clause 1, carried. Clause 2, carried. Long title, carried. Sergius is not talking. I will ask him to explain if care is not taken. Explanatory memorandum, carried. Okay, even Sergius will have carried him. So, leader, we are done.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to move that we're done, right? I still move that the House invite back to the plenary to report progress. I so move.
Rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to second the motion that the House do revert back to plenary for the purpose of reporting progress. I so second.
Reverts to plenary. Honorable colleagues, the House, the Committee of Supply considered the report on the bill for an act to amend the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 in order to extend the implementation period of the Federal Capital Territory Appropriation Act 2017 from 31st December 2017 to 31st March 2018, and approved clauses 1 and 2 therein, the explanatory memorandum, and the long title of the bill. Leader, move for the adoption of the report.
Thank you. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I rise to move for the adoption of the report of Committee of Supply. So,
Rules and Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion as moved by the Leader of the House. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Honorable colleagues, the 11th order of the day is consideration report of the Conference Committee on the Bill for an Act to repeal the Bankruptcy Act, Chapter B2, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Bill 2018, and for related matters. Honorable members will recall that the report was laid on Wednesday, 24th January 2018. Honorable Jones Chukudi Onyerere will move for its consideration.
Mr. Speaker, my dear honorable colleagues, Honorable Sir Jones Chukudi Onyerere, representing the largest federal constituency in the country, Nkwere, the Sioux Wangelenjaba federal constituency in Imo State. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move that the House do consider the report of the Conference Committee on a bill for an act to repeal the Bankruptcy Act Cap B2, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Bill 2018, and for related matters.
and approve the recommendations therein. I so move.
Seconder. Honorable T.J. Yusuf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm T.J. Yusuf. I rise to second the motion ably moved by Honorable Jones Henry.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. 13th order of the day, honorable colleagues, consideration report of the Committee on Capital Market and Institutions, the bill for an act to facilitate the development of Nigeria's capital market by enabling the conversion and re-registration of the Nigerian Stock Exchange from a company limited by guarantee to a public company limited by shares and for related matters. Honorable members who recall the report late Tuesday, 21st November 2017. Honorable Yusuf Tajuddin will move for the consideration report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am Honorable T.J. Yusuf. I represent the people of Kaba, Pulu, Jumfara constituency, and from Kogi State. My dear colleagues, I dare move that the House do consider the report of the Committee on Capital Market and Institutions on the bill for an act to facilitate the development of the Nigerian capital market by enabling the conversion and re-registration of the Nigerian Stock Exchange from a company limited by guarantee to a public company limited by shares, and for related matters, HB 983, and approve the recommendations herein. I so move, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues.
Honorable Rita Oji, second. Diaspora.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and distinguished colleague. My name is Rita Oji, member representing Ajeromi Fellow to Federal Constituency from Lagos State. I rise to second the motion every moved by Honorable T.J. I say second, Mr. Speaker.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. 13th order of the day, honorable colleagues, consideration report of the ad hoc committee on investigation into non-compliance by the Nigerian Export Promotion Council with the House resolution, the petition by aggrieved staff of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council against the management of the council. Honorable members who recall the report was late on Thursday, 30th November 2017. Honorable Aliu B. Aman Pategi will move for its consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to move that the House will consider the report of the ad hoc committee on investigation into non-compliance by the Nigerian Export Promotion Council with the House resolution on the petition by aggrieved staff of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council against the management of the council and approve the recommendations therein made on the 30th of November 2017. I so move.
Honorable Jega.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, my honorable colleagues. I rise to second the motion, ably moved by my honorable colleagues. I so second. Thank you.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. The ayes have it. The 14th order of the day is consideration report of the Nigeria-Saudi Arabia Parliamentary Friendship and Hajj Affairs, the highlights of 2017 Hajj. Honorable members recall the report was late on Tuesday, 16th January 2018. Honorable Abdullahi Balarabe Salami will move for its consideration.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm Abdullahi Balarabe Salami, member representing Malaba, Federal Constituency of Sokoto. I rise to move that the House do consider the report of the Nigeria-Saudi Arabian Parliamentary Friendship and Hajj Affairs on the highlights of the 2017 Hajj and approve the recommendations therein. Thank you.
Seconder, Honorable Kola.
Thank you, our highly respected Speaker, honorable colleagues.
My name is Obatunde Gabriel Kolawole. I represent Akoko South-East Federal Constituency. I am from Ondo State. Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion ably moved by Honorable Abdullahi Balarabe as so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Who is it? Leader. Leader is not on the seat, acting leader.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, I hereby move that the House do resolve to a committee of the whole to consider reports.
Rules and business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion as ably moved by the acting leader of the House. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against it say nay. Ayes have it. Also hereby resolves into committee of the whole to consider the reports.
Honorable colleagues, let's start because we have a lot of job to do. So the first report to be considered is that of the House Committee on Banking and Currency. On the report of the Conference Committee on the Bill for an Act to repeal the Bankruptcy Act, number 16 of 1979, Chapter B2, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 2004. And enact the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act 2017 and for other related matters, House Bill 700. And I invite the Chairman of the Committee on Banking and Currency to speak to the report.
Mr. Speaker, my dear honorable colleagues, Honorable Sir Jones Woody Onyerere, representing the largest federal constituency in the country, Ngwere Isu, one Gelengaba federal constituency in the state. Mr. Speaker, this is just a harmonization between us and the Senate, because we realize that in the two versions approved by both houses, that there were few differences. So in order to get that right, in the wisdom of the House decided that we should harmonize the two versions. The bill simply seeks to provide for corporate and individual insolvency, to provide for the adaptation of the insolvent debtor, and also to create the office of the supervisor of insolvency and for other related matters. There were about six clauses that had substantial differences, but the good news is that the House version was adopted in 5 out of the 6 clauses. Mr. Chairman, for your kind addition, it's important that I also bring the observation of the Committee of Banking and Currency with respect to bills that would have necessarily come to our committee. Mr. Chairman, it's important for us to note that we run a bicameral legislature, and as such, this issue of concurrence might not augur so well in very specific bills. It's often said that the devil is in the details. So it's important for us to follow the usual legislative procedures in order to make sure that we come up with very effective bills. So I think that it's proper that in trying to concur to most of these bills from the Senate, that we also allow the House to go through the necessary legislative procedures. I think that's the proper thing to do. But in the wisdom of the House, it was good that we got this harmonized. But going forward, I think we should know that that's the submission of my committee. So we've actually done the harmonization, and we are ready to have the House attend to it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman, House Committee on Banking and Currency. Yes, I was just looking at this report. At the remark column, I wouldn't know what informed you to write the appellation of House versions, Senate version, since you have harmonized. I don't think it's not supposed to be in the report. Okay, anyway, it's been sorted out, but in case of next time, at the remark column, it is sufficient to just write House in front, and that is enough to show that it is the House version that you are taking. So, yes, some few clauses, about 6 clauses. So, let's go ahead and adopt, or approve the clauses rather. Hajia, you want to say something? Okay, you are giving the floor. But meanwhile, let me start properly. Clause 1. No, it's clause 1 that she wants to comment on. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my highly respected colleagues. For drafting elegance, when you look at clause 1, it says a debtor commits an act of bankruptcy where the debtor, and again, a debtor. So yes. So in column 2. Okay. Thank you.
So clause 1. Clause 2. The bill sought to amend section 24, which is now clause 3, carried. Sought to amend section 260, which is now deleted and is deleted, carried. It seeks to amend section 264, which is now clause 5, I think, carried. And again, section 267, which is now clause 6, A part is upheld and the B part is deleted, carried. The explanatory memorandum carried. Long title of the bill carried. The next report to be considered is that of House Committee on Capital Markets for a bill for an act to facilitate the development of Nigerian capital markets by enabling the conversion and re-registration of Nigerian Stock Exchange from a company limited by guarantee to a public limited to a public company limited, PLC, by shares and for related matters, 2017, House Bill 983. And I invite the Chairman of the House Committee on Capital Markets to speak to the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm T.J. Yusuf. I represent the people of Kaba, Bunu constituency. Mr. Chairman, my dear colleagues, the bill became very important due to the global practice that is presently being operated over the world. Hardly do you find any stock exchange that is not demotionalized. Kenya, Ghana, Egypt. So the committee looked at all of the other scenarios in other part of the world, got stakeholders to make contribution and give us better information and perspective. Mr. Chairman, my dear colleagues, what is there in here is the result of a thorough and painstaking effort by the committee. The demotionalization will make Nigeria Stock Exchange become a company limited by shares. By implication, you can invest in stock exchange. Now, it ceases to be the control of few individuals. You can buy shares publicly in Nigeria Stock Exchange and profit from the wealth. I think the intention is to further democratize the wealth distribution. Mr. Chairman, my dear colleagues, without this bill, we cannot demutualize. Because by karma, if you attempt to demutualize, all that is called Nigerian Stock Exchange has ceased to exist. And there will not be. This is a bridge between where we are and where we are going. This is an enabling law that's required to give teeth to that intention. Mr. Chairman, my dear colleagues, I appeal that we look at bill thoroughly and take an informed decision together as a House. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, House Committee on Capital Market, let me ask this question. Are we now subscribing to the shares of stock exchange or the company quoted on stock exchange? Which one?
This will enable us to subscribe to the share of stock exchange. We can subscribe to their share after this.
So the stock exchange itself becomes a publicly quoted company instead of a limited liability. I ask this question because it will have the two components. The stock exchange itself can hold share there, and stock exchange itself can have company listed on it. Okay, thank you very much. I think that question is instructive. So this bill has 9 clauses, so let's go ahead and consider the clauses. Clause 1, Clause 2, Clause 3, Clause 4, Clause 5, Clause 6, Clause 7, Clause 8, Clause 9. Explanatory memorandum, long title of the bill. Honorable colleagues, the next report to be considered is that of the House Committee, ad hoc committee, to investigate the non-compliance of the Nigeria Export Promotion Council on the House Resolution HR 124/2017. And I invite the chairman of that committee, Honorable Aliyu Pateki, to speak to the report.
Chairman, my colleagues, this is a basic report on issues relating to the staff and management of the Nigeria Export Promotion Council. And simply, it has to do with an earlier motion brought by a colleague of ours to the floor on the treatment meted out to the staff by the management. And they had sought the intervention of the House so that those issues could be addressed by the People's House. And at the time, they actually did pass resolutions, but unfortunately, the management of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council did not effect the mandate given by the House at the time. And then the Honorable Member had to bring the motion back to the House a second time. And this is why we had to call them. But in calling them this time, what we did, now with some committee of 9 members, we sat down and took the approach of getting them to agree. We invited the agencies that preside over the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, in this case the ministry. We invited the Federal Character Commission. We invited the permanent secretary of the ministry and one or two other people. And the salaries and wages commission. So the reason we did that was that since the House had passed a resolution which the Nigerian Export Promotion Council management didn't implement, we wanted them to tie their hands so that we all sit down together, have a synergy, interface, so that those who are saddled with the responsibility, including the head of service of the Federation, so that those who are saddled with ensuring that, in addition to us agreeing, we will be sure that our mandates will be carried out. So that's why we called all of them. And we made them agree to this. They agreed that they will revise and implement, they will revise their decisions and implement the earlier submission of the recommendations of the House. And this is why we came up with this report this way. There are 6 prayers, and I want to ask my colleagues to adopt them so that the matter can be finally resolved in an amicable fashion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman of that committee. Yes, there are 6 prayers, but in our other paper, they listed 2 prayers as 5. One is 5, one is 6. So let us now go ahead and consider the recommendation. Recommendation 1. Chairman House and Business. On recommendation 1.
Yes, the recommendation 1, that may well apply to other recommendations. This is the whole idea about this report. It says it's titled Ad hoc Committee on Investigation into Non-Compliance by the Nigerian Export Promotion Council. Non-recommendation 1 says that the resolutions of the House concerning this matter be fully adhered to by the management of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council. And the next tempting question is, what are the coercive powers, enforcement powers that we have? Should Parliament just be coming to resolutions that will, supposedly they are not obeyed again, we bring a third report, a fourth report, a fifth resolution. So I'm not too comfortable sitting here and placing muscles on issues we know we don't have. If there are certain ways we can place muscles, but this one, of what value? Truly of what value?
Yes, I agree with you, but you have to provide or profile a solution. Is it that we have to delete that recommendation or recount it, or don't go into the issue as if we are powerless in matters like this? We still have some powers, at least to be able to oversight MDAs and come up with a recommendation. So channels and business. Or we allow you, just take a moment, let's listen to other people, why you think of what we should do. But the way you have presented it is as if we are powerless and we should not even look into the functions and let me listen to that first, I will still call you.
You listen to the chairman sir, chairman of the other committee. He said he invited every of the stakeholders, that these positions were agreed to by all already, including the MD involved, head of service, everybody, part of it. So what I think he's trying to do is to now bring to the floor outcome of their resolution, which is already been implemented based on that decision. So I think we are not where he is talking from now. We move from there. Yeah, we have moved from there based on what you said. So
I think when we set up these ad hoc committees and give them terms of references, I think the important thing is that they get results. And in this particular instance, I believe what the chairman of the committee, the approach he took was to mediate. Since the resolution had already been passed and had not been adhered to, I think the logical thing, given what the, it even underlies what the chairman rules and businesses say, given that he really doesn't have any whip that he can use to force them, shackle them into obeying this, I think in this instance, setting up a mediation and arbitration system was the best. And if you read all the way to the bottom of the resolution, not only did they all agree, they gave themselves a time limit. Resolution 7, it gave themselves a time limit within which time all of these resolutions would be implemented. So I honestly believe that it negates whatever is happening in prayer 1. If you know time. Thank you.
Well, the chairman, Honorable Pataki himself, when he was speaking, I think he held it up on the note that, okay, in an amicable way of resolving this. So if you are talking about an amicable way, and you bring in a resolution like number 1, that since the party, supposing it's not adhered to, what do you do? That was my position. So a resolution, the resolution of the matter is provided by the chairman himself when he says to find an amicable way, rather than placing muscles at the end of the day, it is not obeyed, we are here helpless, we bring a further resolution, a resolution which will not be obeyed again and make us look helpless in the eyes of those people. So the committee that is saddled with the resolution of this should be interpreted. In the process of interpretation, we will produce more results that when we come on the floor here and issue something over there.
Chairman, honorable members, my name is Mohammed Khair. I represent Martin Mono, When I very much concur with the submissions made by Chairman that our resolutions are purely persuasive in nature, they are not
binding in nature. And having realized that obvious predicament of the legislature with regard to our resolutions, we set up a committee, specifically legislative compliance committee, that will follow up on adherence to our resolution, though they are dually persuasive in nature. And I think it behoves on agencies of government, the parliament being a representative of the people. Whatever parliament says is a replica of the representative will of the Nigerian people. And therefore, it behoves on MDS as a way of moral suasion to adhere to the resolutions passed by Parliament because we are the voice of the people. So, though not binding, it is usually persuasive, and we have a committee that is supposed to follow up and then make sure that such resolutions are adhered to.
Before we resolve to the committee of the whole, the chairman of the committee came to me too. He wanted, in this instance, to add another recommendation of urging the House Committee on Legislative Compliance. But I told him that already that is given. What we just need is our own system to make sure that in a situation like this, whatever we arrive at is properly communicated to the relevant committee, like MC said. MC said two things that are important. That's the first one. The committee should be properly informed and they will be abreast of that. The second one that we are beginning to, not take it seriously. A country is not ruled by law, There is that moral burden. Moral burden we are voted for by almost 180 million people. When we sit down here and take resolution, because there is no law backing it up, you think we should look powerless. So MT said that too again, and that was exactly what I wanted to say. As far as I'm concerned as a legislator, if we pass any resolution here, and such MBA things we are just wasting our time, that means we are morally decadent. The moral aspect of our life is as strong as the law itself. So if you say you are not performing a particular thing or something, you should be ashamed of it. You should be able to carry out. As far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't look powerless again. There is a moral burden in governance, and that moral burden alone is sufficient for the head of MDAs to take our resolution seriously, and that is the message. Yes, that's what they are saying. That while they were sitting, while they sat rather, all the stakeholders agreed to this recommendation, which is a step forward. So we are only finalizing and formalizing for it to be in record. So, Chairman Rules and Business, we are there as Chairman and Business. I want you to emphasize that moral aspect of our life. It's as important as the law itself, because we are governed by moral rectitude. Not only the laws that we make alone. We should be ashamed of ourselves if we don't do our jobs. So recommendation 1, recommendation 2, recommendation 3, okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to remove 2 there, that all the staff due for promotion be promoted with effect from the date of his or her due promotion. To remove the preposition. Remove 2, the preposition 2. That all the staff due for promotion, it shouldn't be to be promoted. leadership, the word should be removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I rise to second. I rise to second the motion amendment moved by my dear colleague.
This is the grammar. That all listen, that all the staff due for promotion be promoted. You don't need the word should again. So the amendment is valid. Those in favor of that amendment say aye. It is bad. Rita. Those against say nay. Ayes have it. So recommendation 3. You are shaking your head, Rita. This is English language. Okay, let us now take, it follows from recommendation 3 that the word should be removed. So recommendation 4, carried, 5, carried, 6, carried. Now the next report to be considered is the report of the House Committee The next report to be considered is that of the House Committee on Friendship between Nigeria and Saudi Arabia, Parliamentary Friendship and Hajj Affairs on the highlights of the 2000s. And I invite Chairman. You raise a point of order. Yes, so Chairman of business.
No, I think I just want to correct that this is not a House Committee. It's just a friendship group. Yes.
If you are doing that, then you should be able to guide us whether the report of the friendship committee should come to the House Committee of the Whole, or it should be a report that will be filed within the. You should guide the House.
Well, thank you. We've had this matter back and forth. My office has had to deal with this matter back and forth, but I think the decision really will have to be taken from leadership. Yes, because I even filed my report, but apparently my report has been, if you like, shoved aside. Until we decide that this is what we want. If we decide that we want this to be a committee on its own, then the standing rules of the House would then be amended to reflect that. As it is now, this falls under, sorry? It's a friendship group. As it is now, it's a friendship group. So it has to come under a standing committee. But if we want that to be the position, as it appears to be the case now, we will amend the standing rules of the House so that we don't have the conflict. It's up to the leadership to determine what they want.
This is a friendship group, and I heard Chika say it's closer to ad hoc committee or stronger, but I can assure you that ad hoc committee and substantive committee of the House, they have equal level, particularly on specific referrals. Please, just hold on, please. Please, hold on, please. Hold on, please. It's just a friendship group. Despite that, I will allow the chairman to go on, since the report, but we have looked at the recommendations. The friendship group does not have the power to write all the recommendations that are contained in this report. So even when you speak to this report is going to be stepped down, and you now ask with the chairman, House Committee on Rules and Business, you will guide or how to write this kind of. What you are saying here is not supported by the standing order of the House. So, chairman of that committee, you can speak to your report, but it will be stepped down. Then you see the chairman, House Committee on Rules and Business, to guide on how you can make recommendation on things like this.
Excuse me. No, special committee. It's not ad hoc. No, special committee. Thank you, Honorable Chairman. This committee, as said by the Chairman rules, you know there is a memo sent to Mr. Speaker, and it was even passed to. So our committee is a special committee on order, I think, where power was given to the House to create a special or ad hoc committee. And under that, okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman. This is a report submitted to the House by this committee, this special committee. It has observations, and based on observations, based on what we observed in the last 2017 Hajj operation, the committee came up with this recommendation for the House in order to improve the Hajj exercise in the Holy Land, as well as to bring easy for our pilgrims in Saudi Arabia while performing their Hajj. So based on that, we come up with this recommendation to ease some difficulties and to improve the Hajj affairs carried out by NAFCON. So the recommendations are there. I hereby call on the Honorable House to consider this recommendation, adopt it in order to improve the Hajj exercise and bring easiness for our pilgrims based on what they go through, some difficulties in the Holy Land. So I hereby move for House to consider this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Like I said, we have stepped down this report. You will liaise with the Chairman of the Committee on Rules and Business to see how we begin to take the report of Friendship Group within our structure. Empty.
Honorable Chairman, honorable members, I hereby move that the House do revert back to the plenary to report progress.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I second the motion as ably moved by the acting leader of the House.
The House hereby reverts back to plenary to report progress. Honorable colleagues, the House in the Committee of the Whole considered the report of the Conference Committee on a bill for an act to repeal the Bankruptcy Act, Chapter B2 Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Bill 2018 and for related matters, and approve the report of the Conference Committee comprising clauses 1 to 6 and the long title of the bill. The House in the Committee of the Whole considered the report of the Committee on Capital Markets and Institutions on a bill for an act to facilitate the development of the Nigerian capital market by enabling the conversion and re-registration of the Nigerian Stock Exchange from a company limited by guarantee to a public company limited by shares, and for related matters and approved clauses 1 to 9, the explanatory memorandum and long title of the bill. The House in the Committee of the Whole considered the report of the ad hoc Committee on Investigation into Non-Compliance by the Nigeria Export Promotion Council with the House resolution on the petition by aggrieved staff of the Nigeria Export Promotion Council against the management of the council, and approved recommendation 1 and 2, approved recommendation 3 and 4 as amended, approved recommendation 5 and 6 of the reports. The House in the Committee of the Whole was briefed on the report of the Nigeria-Saudi Arabia Parliamentary Friendship Group and Hajj Affairs on the highlight of the 2017 Hajj and the fair consideration of the report. Chair, acting leader.
Move that the House do adopt the reports of the Committee of the Whole.
Chairman of Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second the motion assembly moved by the acting leader of the House. I so second.
The House stands adjourned till Thursday, 25th of January 2018, 11 a.m. Sorry, honorable colleagues, sorry. Those in favor of the motion that the report considered in the committee of the whole be adopted, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. I know it's the one that is distracting. Empty.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, I hereby move that the House do adjourn to tomorrow, Thursday, the 25th of January 2018, by 11 a.m. I so move.
Chairman Service.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Finally, I move to second the motion for adjournment to tomorrow as every move by the acting leader of the House. I so second.
The House stands adjourned till Thursday, 25th of January 2018, 11 a.m.